Hello, Public School Academy team. Today I want to share with you, we talk about social emotional learning, and today I wanted to share with you some things to think about, some things to maybe try to help you with your own personal social emotional learning. Be aware of yourself and how you perceive yourself and how you manage emotions and how you work with others and how that folds into the decisions you make, and the way you see things and the way you care for others and yourself. So real quickly, I want you to, if you can, take out a piece of paper, fold it in half, and on one side, I want you to put real simplified, sad face, stop. On the other side, I want you to put a happy face. Give you a couple seconds to do that. All right. So on the one side of your paper, I want you to write down criticism. And that's the side that has the sad face, criticism. Research shows that students, about 75% of the time, they receive criticism from educators. I think one study said that, and this wasn't just students, but young people hear about 148,000 no's. And I can't remember how often that is, if that was a year or what have you. But I want to encourage you, when you are tempted to criticize students or staff or yourself, that you pause. I had a very wise person who I care a lot about tell me, embrace the pause. Before you say something, just pause. And in that pause, consider shifting what you're about to criticize. Is there a way you can, instead of criticizing, now go to the other side of your paper and put affirmation? Is there something there you can affirm? So I'll give you a good example. After my first child, I gained a lot of weight, a lot of weight. And even though my baby only weighed 9 pounds, 9 ounces, for some reason, I thought after I had the baby that I would lose all my weight. Well, my baby wasn't 65 pounds. And so all that other weight kind of just stayed there. Instead of criticizing me, because my husband knew I was already kind of beating myself up about it, he said, and I hopefully will never forget this. I think he said, honey, he said, you know what? Let's go shopping and let's get you some new clothes to complement your new figure. And I said, okay. In my mind, I was criticizing myself and saying, I can't believe I let myself get this size. And I was beating myself up. But to hear him step in and affirm me and say, hey, there's something we can do about this, basically. But he just said, let's go get some things to complement your new figure. And I stopped looking at it as such a negative thing, and because he affirmed me in that small little comment. So sometimes with our students and other staff members, that new teacher who is struggling, instead of criticizing, saying, you know what, you need to have these students sit down and you're going to need to get them together. And I wouldn't let no students talk over my voice like that. It doesn't mean what you're saying isn't true, but that is a sharp cut to somebody who is trying really hard, who isn't quite sure how to get everybody together. That hurts a lot. So think of a way you can affirm that teacher. Hey, Miss Roberts, I see how much you care about the students and all the different strategies you've used with the students, the lights on, lights off, clap the hands. Thank you for taking the time to look up different ways to be able to reach the kids without yelling at them. I really appreciate the way that you really show self-control and patience. Now, if you want to offer help or feedback, like they tell us with the kids' report cards, if you have to say something that comes off negative or something that needs to be addressed, you sandwich it: affirmation, criticism, affirmation. So give that affirmation, to the teacher or to the student or what have you. And then in the middle, not so much criticism, but maybe helpful feedback. Let's say if this teacher's name was, Miss Thomas, I noticed that sometimes something that has worked for me and it may or may not work for you. But one thing is when the students are speaking, it's hard for them to hear you. So maybe if you wait and let them know when it's quiet, I'll give you the next direction. And just, it's okay taking that time to wait for a minute. Not for every single voice to be perfectly silent, because you always have one kid who wants to be the jokester and sabotage it. But when you get the majority of them at a place where you can speak and they can hear you, then do that. Just try it. That way you save your voice, you save some of your energy to be able to give that good teaching that I know that you prepare for them. So see, affirmation, feedback, affirmation. So that's one. So hopefully on your paper, you have criticism on one side, sad face. On the other side, you have affirmation. Our next one, complaining. Put complaining on the sad face. We know complaining produces like nothing. We annoy ourselves and others, actually. On the opposite side, what I want you to try is gratitude. It's easy to fall into that space of complaining about stuff, seeing what's not right. I'm just asking that you take the time to say, in this situation, there is some things that aren't right. But what's right? Or what's going on that I can be just grateful for, okay, in this moment. So yes, John is not doing well with his time test, but I'm so grateful that he is not having full meltdowns and that he's willing to try. If I can come with gratitude and then let John know, John, I appreciate the way that when you, and I don't suggest time tests, we have a whole PD about that. Please don't do those. But John, I really appreciate the way that you took those flashcards home, or that during free time that you were practicing some of those flashcards. That took a lot of responsibility. Thank you. Or I appreciate the way that you whispered when you were going by. I thank you. Now that may be the very same child who's had a rough day every other place, but me complaining about that child and their behavior doesn't change it. Me being grateful for the people who are helping me work with that child, or for being healthy enough to have the energy or patience that day, or Lord, just being thankful for recess or a break time to breathe and allow them to take a break from me and me to take a break from them. Sometimes give you extra energy to be able just to have that moment to not escalate situations that don't need to be escalated. When we catch ourselves complaining, we're more likely to escalate a negative situation because we're already telling ourselves and giving ourselves permission to see everything wrong. So if we take that situation and you have John sitting there and we go, oh, he never finishes them. He always makes noise during the test. And then what we'll do is we'll start to create this extended narrative. And because our brain likes patterns. So be careful about the patterns you start. Your brain will fill them in. If they're negative, you'll get a chain of negativity. I don't know about you. I don't want to be chained or linked up to anything that's a weight or a burden or heavy on me. Got enough stuff going on in life. Connect yourself with gratitude, and those feelings of happiness come off a little bit more. Doesn't make everything perfect, but it puts your head in a healthier place to make a positive impact on others. Ready? Next one. Worrying. Put that on your sad face side. Please write this down. Worrying. I learned from a therapist, and she said, or social worker rather, she says, worry is when you get wrapped up in the possibilities. Well, what if, and what if, and what if? And we totally ignore the fact that the probability of those possibilities is usually really low, especially for us who have the huge what ifs. Well, what if this? And it's just like, okay, you just escalated your whole internal system. In the words of my kids, calm yourself. Instead of worrying, sometimes on the opposite side with the smiley face that you're writing down right now, put the word trust, Trust. Sometimes just trust the process. Sometimes we just trust that tomorrow will be a better day. Sometimes we trust in our colleagues and we say, hey, can I see your lesson plan? I'm not sure how to teach, this particular lesson on ratios. And I trust that if I ask you for help, I'm not going to worry about teaching it wrong. I'm just going to watch this video on YouTube to help me get this right. I trust that if I don't get through all 5 objectives this week, that the world is not going to end and that my students will not be failure. I trust that I can go to my curriculum coach or my mentor and say, could, you show me a way to simplify this in a way that they can get it. I trust that my spouse loves me enough to understand that sometimes I come home tired and wore out and I just need a nap. I'm not going to worry about taking care of everything in my household every day perfectly. I'm just going to trust in the people around me, knowing that trust is risky. But I'm also going to trust in myself that I can get through this year when I lean on the supports of other people and wise counsel and don't try to do this by myself. Next one, sad face, and put down emotionalism. Long word, I know. Sometimes this is our emotional reasoning, and this is when we go straight by feelings. And it's, I don't feel like. I had someone tell me feelings are not smart. So if you go by your feelings, sometimes you feel like slapping people. Well, you can't just slap people. Sometimes you feel like staying in the bed and not getting out for several days. Can't do that either. Not to be productive. So I want to give you the opposite. And these are things that I just was taught by others who are way, way, way smarter than me with way more experience. And they said the opposite of that, not by living by your feelings, but live by your principles. And those are different for all of us, But if one of your principles is integrity or honesty, if one of your principles is, hard work, whatever your principles are that you stand for, those have to be your guide, not your feelings, because your feelings will get you in trouble. Sometimes you'll hear our students say, well, I didn't feel like doing it, or I don't feel motivated. You all, when we think about emotion, that same therapist told me, she said, you know what? Motion can impact emotion. So if you have a principle and you know what? I know what type of person I am. I like to honor my word. I'm responsible. It's one of my principles. If I say I'm going to do it, I want to do it. And I want to do it well. I don't want to be lying to people and saying I'm going to do stuff I'm not going to do. So if that's one of my principles, being responsible or dependable, then even though I may not feel like it, I'm going to get in motion. I'm going to do the responsible thing. I tell my children that, responsibility, who is able to respond, instead of them arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes or who didn't grab the laundry out. And I'm like, well, who was being responsible? Who was able to respond at that time? And it's like you all were. So you don't look at, well, it's not my job, or he should have, or I did it last time. That's a waste of breath. Are you able to respond? Now, if you have something else you're supposed to be doing, and it's your time to do homework or your time to do something else, then that's one thing. But if you have the time and the ability to get something done and you see there's a need and it's not going to cause you to go against something else you already promised to be doing, respond. Be responsible, whether you feel like it or not. Now, once you get it done, the motion, the action of getting it done, that emotion changes. Where instead of having something to complain about other people not doing, you can know, okay, that is done, it's off the list, it's taken care of, So just a thought. I wouldn't say fake it till you make it, but I would say sometimes we have to stop looking at the, and it's the F word, fair. Our emotions will say, well, that's not fair. So-and-so gets paid more than me, so they can do that. I've heard this one a lot too. Look, I'm a parent, not a teacher. So I'm not going to put myself all this extra energy. And you start to do what? Complain. You start to be a little bit ungrateful. Let's keep it real. You start to criticize people. And I'm not just talking to paraprofessionals. I use that example because my mother is a paraprofessional. And most of the people I'm really close to are, or a lot of them rather. And we've all sat in that same thing. Sometimes teachers, we do the same thing when it comes to leadership. My kids would say, we get in our feelings, and it's just like, well, you know what? They want me to do, and it goes that list, that criticism, that complaining. Then we start worrying if we're going to be able to do what we're asked to do, and then we get in our feelings. And none of that helps us to achieve anything. All it does is attack our own health and wellness and the way other people look at us or are able to trust us. Because who wants to trust somebody to help them who complains all the time or criticizes all the time? All right, almost done. Ready? On the sad face, I want you to put avoidance. Oh, wait. Yeah, avoidance. Avoidance, this was mine. I'm just not going to do it. I just don't want to deal with. There's certain conversations I don't want to have. Certain conversations I know I needed to have with my students, with certain parents, with my school leader, even with my curriculum coach. And we don't like to have uncomfortable conversations. But sometimes there's some things that need to be brought up, not in a critical way, but in a way that says, hey, here is something that's going on. And I would really appreciate some help with this one or some guidance, or I just don't know what to do in this case. So the opposite of avoiding things, and I'll be honest, as a former curriculum coach also, I've seen people just avoid things. And you go, where's your lesson plans? Instead of communicating that you weren't quite sure how to get them done, or that you had a lot of life stuff happen over the weekend, and you don't want everybody to know all your business, you just don't do them. You just don't grade those papers. And then at the end of the marking period, you freak out when you realize you're supposed to have 1 grade a week in the book. And now 2 weeks before grades are due, you're trying to put in grades. Avoidance doesn't help a situation, right? It kind of just allows it to marinate. Instead of avoiding things that need to be done, whether you feel like it or not, I'm going to encourage you just to act. The minute you think about avoiding the task, act on the task. So maybe I have 5 things that need to be graded. Instead of saying, oh my goodness, I don't have time to put all 5 of these in. That's a lot. Some of these require rubrics. I haven't used them. I can, in that moment, make an action. All right. I'm going to take the simplest one that already has a grade at the top and put that in the computer. I'm going to schedule a time to do the one with the rubrics. It won't be today, but I'm going to schedule a time to knock that one out. And then that assignment right there, I'm going to use as formative assessment. That is not going to be a grade. That one, I'm going to have the kids reflect on with a partner. Why? Because they need to know what they did wrong in this case or how to get better. And then we need to have a master example or an exemplar shown. And we need to go through that, maybe do error analysis on one of these papers with no name showing to walk through what was incorrect and how that could have been corrected better. Giving yourself that time to pull back and have actions as opposed to becoming overwhelmed and just avoiding the whole thing. All right, ready? Next one on the sad face side, self-pity. And educators, we kind of can be really good at this because sometimes we care for people so much that instead of doing self-care for ourselves, we fall into self-pity. And it kind of sounds like this. I put all my time, I spent all that time on them lesson plans, and the kids didn't even pay attention. And they're gonna come do an observation on me at this time of day. They didn't even make those sense. You just start to, everything is like a personal attack on you. Trust me, observations are not personal attacks. They're things your school leaders have to do to be accountable and to be compliant with the people that they're trying to answer to and provide information to. But when we fall into that self-pity, we also can do self-destructive behaviors. When we get into the woe is me, we start to cope with things like, you know what, I put in a long day. So if I'm gonna sit here and eat this bucket of ice cream in the bed and fall asleep, I've been through a lot today. I deserve to be able to eat my ice cream in peace. Well, the issue with eating the ice cream in peace, you eat enough of gallons of ice cream in peace, it's not going to give you peace, especially if you eat it late at night. That's really not the peace you want. But instead of having self-pity, the opposite is, on the other side with the smiley face, responsible talking to yourself. So for example, instead of saying, woe is me, I'm a victim, I can't control my circumstances, my job has me doing this, that, and the other. Responsible thinking. You agreed to work that job. Either you knew what most of the responsibilities were with that job, or you're learning them. And you are more than able to do what you're being asked to learn and grow and try. Nobody in your building is absolutely wonderful at everything they do. So use responsible thinking. If there's some things you need to do, make a list and slowly check those things off the list. Learn to encourage yourself instead of discouraging yourself. And if you need to, get an accountability partner. So when you have your pity pat parties, invite somebody to the party that's going to be like, okay, you've been complaining for 10, 15 minutes. Okay, so what's next? There was a counselor who worked with students who were aging out of foster care. And she told them, all right, you get 3 minutes to cry, then you need to go gangster. And what she meant by that was, yes, you were waiting for someone to pick you up and they never came. Nope, you don't have a car, you don't have a bus pass, you don't have a bike, and you got to get back home. Or maybe you don't have a home and you got to get back to the shelter. You take your 3 minutes to cry and pout and be mad. But after that 3 minutes, you better get your phone, get your GPS and start walking to that shelter and get there before they close. Because you don't have time to sit on that corner about who didn't pick you up, who didn't bring you something in the family you never had. Get your tears, acknowledge your pain. I don't invalidate that. But at the same time, get to moving, because you have to get yourself in that shelter before they close, or you're going to have something else to cry about. Get moving. And I remember thinking like, wow, that's harsh. But at the same time, what would be more harsh? Having this young person who just aged out of foster care sit there and just marinate in their sadness, ruminate about all the things that are going wrong in that moment, or take action, start moving and say, you know what? I may not be responsible for the person who didn't come pick me up, but I am completely responsible for these 2 feet and walking in the right direction to where I know it's safe. And I can do that. I can't make people love me. I can't make other people be responsible, but I can get to resources that I know are available and are there. And I can do it in a timely manner. Wow, the lessons we learn from other people, right? Last one, and this is a big one, especially for, this is a big one for people, not just educators. On the sad face, I want you to write bitterness. And bitterness is when we've had those negative experiences and we haven't let them go, whether it be last month, 2 months ago, last year. It's the staff member that you really like that left the school because they had conflict with another person. It's the decisions that were made with leadership that you didn't agree with. It's the fact that other people got promoted and promotions or pay raises and you didn't. It's those things that happen. You got sick and they didn't call. You checked on them, but they didn't check on you. Whatever would cause you to have bitterness. And even with our students, some of us can become bitter against our students because of things their parents have said or done to us. And then we become bitter. We don't want to try to work as hard with that student. We have a chip on our shoulder because of something that was said or done. And these are real chips. These are not chocolate chips. This is just like the axe hit the wood and there's a piece missing out of me after that incident. The incident hurt, I was offended, and I haven't processed it fully with another person. I haven't forgot it. But what I do encourage you, and it's another F word, it's not forgiveness and it's not fair. On the smiley face side, forgive them. And no, this isn't like a churchy thing. This is me saying for real. I can't remember what the quote exactly was, but they said something like, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You all, I have had situations where kids made me so mad and they parents. I have had situations where my school leader, who I actually love very much, made me so mad. I walked out of an IEP. I walked out the building and I walked around the block. I left the school, left the meeting, did not ask to be excused. I was so upset. I was so done. And I just felt like, what are we doing here? I was mad at the student. And it took a minute for me just walking around this block to realize I had I had it. And I was like, wow. And it was like, I am harboring anger against a 10-year-old little girl with mental illness. It's not her fault she has mental illness. It's not her fault her mother has mental illness, has been incarcerated. It's not her fault her dad has mental illness and can't support. It's not her fault. She didn't pick this one. Did she pick not to do her work? Yeah. Did she pick not to do her work? A lot. Yeah. Is she confrontational? Oh, goodness, yes. Is she 10? Yeah. Is she cared for properly? No. Can I have an impact that way? Yeah. Is she ever going to be the student that makes my data or scores look like they've grown? Or no, maybe not. Maybe. Is she going to require a lot of attention that on Sundays I don't have it to give? Yep. Can I harbor unforgiveness against this little girl and be healthy and serve her correctly? No. So on that walk around the block, I had to walk myself right back in that building, right back in that meeting, sit back in that chair. And I had to breathe. And I had to think, okay, what did my school leader ask me that I can be responsible for? She asked me, in the midst of everything you're telling me this child can't do, what can she do that you can acknowledge? And I was able to think of things that, you know what? She does like such and such. She does respond to so-and-so. But y'all, I'm gonna tell you the truth. It took me to have to go outside. And did I get wrote up for that? Yes, I did. Did I deserve to get wrote up for that? Yes, I did. Probably one of the few write-ups I've gotten. And it showed up on my end of the year review, and it should have. Because it also showed that I had not been caring for myself properly or leaning on my team. I was taking it all on myself because I was going to be the superhero. I gave myself permission to be the victim also. None of that helps. So as we wrap up, I just encourage you, look back at your notes, look at your sad faces, look at your smiley faces. I don't want you to have a rough year. I want you to have a good year. Your year is not going to be perfect as far as external things that come your way, but internally, I want you to try some of these strategies so that you can have peace on the inside. Okay? All right. Have a great day, PSA Academies.